In front of her, behind the locked bars of a cell, a tall and athletic woman was chained up to the wall with a pair of very high-tech shackles that even someone of her strength could not break. She was none other than Wonder Woman. Aren't you even curious about what Savage is up to? He's dangerous. Why? Do you think he might throw a tank through my wall? The blonde woman crossed her arms and said sarcastically. Only a few hours ago, Wonder Woman had crashed the blonde woman's wedding by throwing a tank through the walls of the church where the ceremony was being held. It was the wedding of Vandal Savage and Princess Audrey, the daughter of King Gustav, the ruler of Kuznia. Grow up. He's obviously using you. He's amassing military and political power. For what? What do you think? He's got to be stopped. Wonder Woman shouted, finally reaching the end of her patience. You're a raving lunatic. Not to say you weren't fun to go clubbing with Tilda. This isn't a joke, Audrey. I think Savage is responsible for your father's sudden illness. Wonder Woman tried to reason with her, but the princess, now queen, shot back angrily. And I think you've just crossed a line. Don't walk away, Audrey. You're making a big mistake. I can do whatever I please. Surely, you've noticed by now. She shot back and strolled out of the prison without sparing her another glance. Wonder Woman frowned and started to struggle once more to break her shackles, but it was to no avail. Just then, a bizarre feeling washed over her, a sensation that made her become very alert. While she did not know what to make of it, she heard the sound of a man's footsteps approaching her cell. You? What are you doing here? Wonder Woman said, greatly surprised. A white Onbu fox mask, blonde hair, a fur-collared black cloak that covered his entire body, and a tiny fox cub curled up on his right shoulder, looking as though it was glued to it. The newcomer was none other than the alien mercenary that had rescued and extorted Superman of a huge sum of money. But almost 6 months had passed since then, and Wonder Woman had almost forgotten about the strange alien and his gluttonous talking fox. She had certainly not expected to see him again, much less at that moment, in the prison inside the royal castle of Kuznia. Why is it that whenever I meet one of you guys, you're locked up in a cell? Naruto said with a laugh. When he had met Superman, the Kryptonian had been locked up by the Preserver in a cell. Now when he was meeting Wonder Woman again after half a year, she was locked up in a cell too by Vandal Savage. At first, Wonder Woman's intention had been to ask for help, but she was getting increasingly weirded out by the situation. What are you doing on Earth? How are the guards right next to you not reacting to your presence? Did Vandal Savage somehow hire you? She asked in a low voice. Naruto waved a hand as to reassure her and said, don't worry, Vandal Savage is not my employer. He's my bounty. As for why these men can't see me, they're under an illusion. Something like a spell. It turned out that the strange sensation she was feeling and her instinctual alertness were due to the illusion that he had cast. Is what you said to that bratty princess earlier true? Is Vandal as bad as you claim? He asked. Yes. He's the one who orchestrated World War II and caused the deaths of millions of people. She's not lying. QB whispered. Due to his negative emotion sensing, no lies or negative emotions could escape his radar. Naruto had read up on the data about Vandal Savage that Rui Nok had provided to him, but he always researched the veracity of his information by interacting with the locals and doing some research of his own on site. He never trusted someone's words blindly. All right, thank you, Naruto said and stepped away, about to leave. Hey! Don't just leave, help me out. When Naruto stopped in his tracks but did not immediately say anything, Wonder Woman added quickly, thinking that he was going to try to extort her of money too, as he had done with Superman half a year ago. If you want gold, I'll give you as much gold as you want. She was the princess of the Amazons. She may not be as rich as a billionaire like Batman, but the Amazons had enough treasures and ancient artifacts for her to live in luxury like not many other women on Earth could afford. She just chose not to because of her upbringing as a warrior. Sorry, Princess, no can do. I have a feeling that if I let you out of this cell, you'll try to get in my way and stop me from doing my thing. Seeing the furious glare she threw at him, Naruto involuntarily chuckled. Relax. One of your hero friends, I think Batman was his name, is actually hiding just a few feet away. I think he's been waiting for a chance to break you out from your cell, but he fell under my genjutsu like the rest of the guards. Unlike you who seem to have some innate resistance to magic, he's just an ordinary man. Anyway, once I collect my bounty, I'll release the illusion and he'll free you too. With that, he waved goodbye merrily and left. Hey! Wait! Wonder Woman shouted after him, but he just continued to walk. But as Naruto left the cell behind him, QB suddenly jumped off his shoulder. Yo, Kurama, what's up? You go ahead and capture that Muppet. I'll catch up a bit later, Kyubi said. Naruto looked at him strangely. Not a word. Kyubi growled threateningly, but Naruto would not be himself if he didn't poke fun at him when he had the chance. Yuliak Tilda. Shut up. Just get going and stop wasting time. Kyubi barked at him. After that, although Naruto did not continue to tease him, his chortles made Kyubi gnash his teeth. Though he could not fully understand it himself, Kyubi had an inexplicable feeling of attachment to the woman. It was ridiculous to him as well to believe that it was all because of just a belly rub. In truth, Kyubi's feeling of attachment to Wonder Woman was not a strong bond or anything like being willing to put himself in danger for her sake. It was just goodwill. But that slight goodwill he felt for her was significant enough for him to not be comfortable with ignoring her plight like he would normally do with other humans. In the first place, it would not cost him anything to just release Wonder Woman from her shackles once Naruto accomplished his mission. Although his masking technique made his eyes look blue, in reality, currently, his eyes were red and his pupils looked like a cross between a slit and a horizontal bar. At that moment, every single life signature in the castle was as clear in his perception as though he could see them with his own eyes. Due to his Sage mode, it was a piece of cake for Naruto to find Vandal Savage's location because his life signature was clearly different from other humans. It was quite similar to that of the Amazon princess locked in the cell. Not quite as strong, but still similar. Is that woman immortal like Vandal Savage too? Immortal like me? Naruto asked himself, intrigued. When he had come to Earth the first time around, he had not used his Sage mode as he had had no reason to. Unless it was for the sake of a mission, he would generally prefer to not use his Sage mode on the planets inhabited by sentient creatures due to the high degree of pollution of nature and the harmful effects that drawing such infected energy would have on him when taken in large doses. Soon enough, he reached the control room. In a puff of smoke, his body transformed into that of a housefly. Henge was one of the first and easiest techniques that shinobi used to learn back in his homeworld. Even 10-year-old kids could perform it. But, despite its simplicity, it was invaluable for any spy, sabotage, or assassination missions that had to be completed covertly. Vandal, what do you think you are doing? The new Queen of Kiznia asked in disbelief. Just a few moments before that, Colonel Vox, Vandal Savage's right-hand man, had confirmed the destruction of the Justice League spacecraft. Destroying the Justice League. Building a railgun. Assuming total dominion over the nations of the earth, Vandal Savage said from his throne-like seat. Then, he chuckled. Sweet foolish child. Wonder Woman was right all along. Ridiculous. You'd have to be over 100 years old. Queen Audrey said in denial. I'm far older than that, Vandal Savage boasted. It was over 25,000 years ago when I got this power. While my fellows cowered with fear, I dared to approach the strangely glowing rock that fell from the sky. It was warm and the night was very cold. I slept curled up next to it, not realizing what its radiation would do to me. But over the millennia that followed, as I watched those around me grow old and die while I remained unchanged, I discovered the truth. I came to accept my destiny. I lived to rule. Delusions of grandeur aside, I rule Kiznia. Queen Audrey shot back. That's why I married you, Vandal Savage said smugly. It's also why I poisoned your father. You poisoned my father? She yelled and slapped him with all of her strength, leaving a trail of bloodied scratches on his face. But after Vandal Savage grabbed her arms and immobilized her, she grew shocked when she saw the clawed skin of his cheek heal up in a second. Guards, confine this brat to her quarters. At his words, 2 soldiers grabbed the young queen roughly and started to drag her outside. But everyone in the room froze when a masked man appeared behind Savage Vandal out of nowhere. The self-entitled king of Kiznia suddenly found his feet leaving the ground when a steel-like hand clenched around his neck and lifted him in the air. A perfect Russian came out of the masked man's mouth. My mission was to capture you and hand you over in a perfect condition, but trash like you doesn't deserve to live even as a lab rat. At that moment, the soldiers in the control room and Colonel Vox woke up from their stupor and immediately started to yell as they pointed their weapons at him. Release him immediately, Vandal Savage also struggled to say despite his throat being choked. Whatever you were paid, I'll give you double. No, triple. But just as his words ended, Naruto's other hand clenched into a fist and punched a hole into his back, through his chest, obliterating his heart. A large amount of blood splattered over Queen Audrey and the 2 guards that had been the closest to him. The woman screamed in terror and she lost strength in her legs. The guards themselves were petrified and could not keep a hold of her as she collapsed on the floor. Kill him, Colonel Vox hollered, and then he opened his mouth wide and initiated his sonic scream. But even before the sound waves could reach their target, A blade of pressurized air separated his head from the rest of his body. The other soldiers in the room became still like statues. They did not dare to even move a muscle. In the deathly silence that was instilled, a sudden coughing noise came from Vandal Savage's previously lifeless body. I am immortal. Cough, I can't be killed. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that you can do to me. As he said that, Vandal Savage even broke into raspy laughter. But his laughter died in his throat when another blade of wind beheaded him too, like his subordinate. What do you know? I got to kill you twice and even complete my bounty too. This must be my lucky day. Naruto chuckled. Let's see how you're going to revive in an inanimate space, devoid of air, where even time doesn't exist. He took out 2 sealing scrolls from his cloak and unfurled them unhurriedly. Without even looking at the soldiers, he warned them, "Don't make any moves. Don't give me a reason to kill you." What a joke. The soldiers around were scared to even breathe too loud, let alone entertain any thoughts of acting against him at that moment. They were just average humans while, in their eyes, he looked like a demon. Even the bratty queen, Audrey, had none of her previous haughtiness. Her face was livid as she watched him, too terrified to move even an inch from where she had fallen. But Naruto himself could not care less about anyone else in the room. He had no interest in killing the others. He had been a shinobi in the past. In a way, he had been military as well. He knew that the soldiers were only following orders. Nevertheless, if they were to shoot at him, he would show no mercy, like with Colonel Vox. He threw one of the scrolls on Vandal Savage's head and the other one on the rest of his body, making them vanish in 2 small clouds of white smoke. Bringing a finger to his left ear, Naruto spoke. "Ait, Kurama, I'm done here. Kiss your girlfriend goodbye and meet me at the ship." "She's not my girlfriend, you piece of..." Kyubi yelled into his earpiece, but Naruto cut off the connection with a chuckle. After he grabbed the 2 sealing scrolls from the floor and pocketed them inside his cloak, he disappeared, leaving only a few arcs of yellow and black light flickering in his wake. A few minutes after Naruto teleported away from the room, Batman and Wonder Woman burst through the doors of the control room. But they only found an obscene amount of blood splattered everywhere. Soaked with Vandal Savage's blood, Queen Audrey was still lying on the floor with a blank look on her face, while the rest of the soldiers in the room were looking at each other filled with helplessness and uncertainty. They did not know what they were supposed to do in that situation. Despite Queen Audrey's previous behavior towards her, Wonder Woman came to her and asked kindly, "Audrey, can you tell me what happened?" But the blonde woman was in shock. She was incapable of speech at that moment, just staring blankly at the pool of blood on the floor. "You, tell me what happened here," Batman ordered one of the soldiers. After getting the full story from the soldier, Batman's hands clenched into fists. Not for the first time since he had joined the Justice League, he had found out the hard way what it meant to be a part of a team of superheroes while he had no superpowers himself. He had fallen prey to the alien mercenaries' illusion technique without even being aware of it, just like the men guarding Wonder Woman's cell. Batman was confident about fighting against anyone if he was allowed enough time to prepare and make plans. But without preparation time, in front of an unexpected situation, he was too vulnerable. He was only human. Even more alarming for Batman than falling into Naruto's illusion was that Martian Manhunter at the Watchtower had not detected an alien ship approaching the Earth. That was a massive breach in their defense. What if this time around, the alien mercenaries' mission had been to capture the President of the United States instead of the ruler of Kuznia? What would have happened? The Justice League had been created primarily with the purpose of protecting the Earth from the aliens that would try to invade. If aliens could come to Earth and wreak havoc as they pleased, then what did the Justice League even exist for anymore? They had to take action, and they had to do it fast. "Wonder Woman, let's go. We have to meet with the rest of the Justice League immediately." "But Audrey is. I can't just leave her like that. She is in no condition to." Batman glared at her, and although he did not shout, the words he spoke were very sharp. "What's more important, consoling a spoiled little girl or making sure the Earth is safe? I thought you knew better than that." Wonder Woman looked at him startled. The rough way in which Batman spoke to her now was unlike him. She thought that the two of them had become a little closer after sharing a dance yesterday at the engagement party of then Princess Audrey and Vandal Savage. But Wonder Woman had no way of knowing just how rattled Batman was because of his vulnerability as a human, and that he was not exactly calm at that moment. She thought that Batman was acting like an asshole to her on purpose, to distance himself from her. Because he had done that a few times over the past year since she joined the Justice League. He had even made it clear once that he did not want anyone else in his life, especially not a teammate. In the end, Wonder Woman did not comment anything about her hurt feelings. She chose to stay silent and followed Batman to their javelin to meet with the rest of the Justice League at the Watchtower. However, in her heart, she gave up on any thoughts she might have had about a possible relationship with Batman. He was a good man with qualities worthy of admiration such as his courage, tenacity and resourcefulness, but, in the end, Wonder Woman was a valiant warrior and a princess blessed by the gods themselves. She was not a weak and needy woman that would blindly and endlessly chase someone that did not want her. She was Diana, Princess of the Amazons. She had her pride and dignity too. "Why have you gathered us all here today, Batman?" Green Lantern asked. It was only a few minutes after Flash, Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter sabotaged the International Space Station. To prevent anyone from getting their hands on that powerful railgun, they blew up the whole satellite. Everyone else on board, the astronauts and Kaznia's agents too, was taken out and brought to the Watchtower, thanks to Green Lantern's power ring. But it was only temporary. They had to take them back to Earth. All the members of the Justice League were gathered in the conference room. Except for Wonder Woman, the rest were looking at Batman, waiting for an explanation. "Do you remember that alien mercenary that rescued Superman half a year ago? He's back. He came back to Earth and our Watchtower's radar couldn't detect it all. So that was the big emergency?" Hawkgirl scoffed. "Last time we met him, he wasn't a psychopath. He saved Superman's life. Appearances can be deceiving. He's dangerous. He put me under an illusion and I didn't even know it until he lifted the spell himself. While Wonder Woman was imprisoned and I was under that illusion, he broke into Vandal Savage's control room and cut off his head." A momentary silence descended. In their memories, the alien mercenary and his talking fox did not strike them as the cold-blooded killer type. If anything, he seemed like a decent person at heart because he had gone out of his way to save Superman and Supergirl. It was Green Lantern that broke the silence. "As far as I'm concerned, good riddance." Seeing the way everyone was looking at him, he said, "That madman poisoned the king of a country, destroyed 3 U.S. Navy ships killing almost everyone on board and then tried to start World War III. I'll say it again, good riddance. Not to mention what he did in World War II too." When presented with the hard facts, nobody could retort against his words. Vandal Savage was one of the worst scourges of the Earth. Batman narrowed his eyes as he spoke. "This guy is a mercenary. He'll do whatever he's paid for. What if his target was the US president instead of Vandal Savage? What could we have done to stop him when we can't even detect him?" At his words, everyone finally realized the gravity of the situation. What Batman was worried about. "We've banded together and created the Justice League after Imperium nearly took over our planet almost 1 year ago. Our purpose, as the Justice League, was primarily to defend against alien threats. If we can't do that, what is the Justice League needed for anymore? We don't need to work together just to keep in check the criminals with superpowers. We've been doing that just fine, solo, long before the Justice League was formed." Superman nodded and said in support to his words, "Batman is right. We're not the only ones who took the responsibility of protecting the innocent. Almost every large city has its own local hero or group of heroes that protect it, just like us. As the Justice League, we must not forget about our purpose." As they started to discuss how to improve Earth's defenses against external threats, an alarm started to blare from the Watchtower's control room. Flash was the first to arrive and see the reason. An enormous alien ship could be seen heading towards Earth at a very high speed. "Even after all these years, I can't see what you like so much about ramen. The taste is nothing special and there is so little meat. We're also in the middle of a job, aren't we?" Kyuubi's voice sounded in Naruto's earpiece. Naruto brought the bowl of ramen to his mouth and drank all the remaining soup in one breath. "Shut up. When was the last time I had ramen?" "Half a year ago. 6 months. Suddenly, a very loud growling sound almost made Naruto go deaf in 1 year. "Oi, Kurama, the hell was that? What are you doing?" "Hee hee, just a stupid bear that didn't know its place. I'm going to eat roasted bear now. Talk to you later," Kyuubi said and then cut off his transmission. "Good grief," Naruto said and chuckled at Kyuubi's antics. After capturing Vandal Savage, Naruto did not immediately leave the Earth. Earth was one of the very few planets where people cooked ramen and he had not eaten any in half a year, since the last time he came to Earth. Naturally, he would not pass on the opportunity to have some again. But Kyuubi did not tag along with him this time around and chose instead to wander through the Balkan Mountains, where Kaznia was located, in the meantime, having some fun of his own. As for Naruto, he flew halfway across the planet, from southeastern Europe to the northeastern coast of the American continent, to Boston City, where he had eaten ramen the last time. While the Justice League was having a very serious discussion concerning the danger that Naruto posed, the man in question was in a world of happiness as mountains of empty bowls of ramen piled up on his table. Since it was early morning on the eastern coast of America at that moment, there were other customers besides him in the restaurant too. It goes without saying that his outrageous eating immediately became the focus of their attention. Wearing a mask while eating did not do him any favors either. Some crazy alien crashed on Earth again? Hey, Russell, turn up the volume. One of the customers asked the clerk behind the counter. It looked like the customer in question was a regular because the clerk listened to his request and turned up the volume on the TV hanging above the counter. Naruto threw a passing glance at the screen, but he immediately focused his full attention on it when he saw the contents of the news report. An alien object crashed in the center of Jump City just 10 minutes ago. The sole survivor of the crash appears to be a young woman in her late teens, but it became clear that she was not human when she spoke in an alien language and started smashing the walls of the surrounding buildings with her hands. Charles Rock is at the scene with more information. As the news anchor spoke, a live footage started playing. But when Naruto saw who that alien was, he said slowly, "No fucking way." He tapped quickly on his wristwatch and a hologram appeared from it. It was the 3D image of a young woman in her late teens with golden-colored skin, long, wavy red hair, and bright green eyes. Void, what are the chances? The girl in the hologram coming from his wristwatch was the very same person as the berserk alien on the news report. It was none other than Coriander, the princess of Tamaran who Naruto was supposed to rescue from the Pshins. An Operation warship was flying at the fastest speed it was capable of in Earth's atmosphere. The moment Naruto realized that the alien that had crashed into Jump City was his bounty, he ditched his ramen in a heartbeat and teleported back to his ship. To cover the distance between Boston and Jump City, Earth's commercial airplanes would need to fly for a few good hours. One city was on the East Coast while the other one was on the West Coast of the USA. In contrast, it took him only a few minutes. However, despite his speedy arrival, by the time he got there, the Central District was already trashed as if it had gone through a war. Destroyed buildings, burning cars, cracked streets, and civilians running away in panic. In the middle of all that destruction, the Tamarian princess was shooting energy bolts from her cuffed hands while screaming in an alien language. Opposite of her, 3 peculiar teenagers were running and dodging as though their very lives were on the line, and that was the actual case. In her desperation and rage, Coriander was shooting energy blasts everywhere around her. That was super close. A green-skinned boy wearing a helmet said while panting. "Girl is gonna wreck the whole city," another one of them said. It was a very buff young man dressed in casual clothes and a hoodie covering his head. Going by the red glow in his left eye, it seemed like he was not entirely human. "I won't let her. I won't lose this fight," the third one said. It was a black-haired boy dressed in a green and red costume. A thin black mask covered his eyes. The 3 of them were none other than Robin, Beast Boy, and Cyborg. At Robin's words, they jumped away from the bus behind which they had taken cover and rushed at the alien girl who had fallen to her knees in exhaustion. But their sight suddenly turned ashen black and they stopped in their tracks. "Maybe fighting isn't the answer," a girl said as she walked out of a side alley. Her entire body was covered by a hooded purple cloak. Further talk among the 4 teens stopped, however, when someone dropped from the sky almost like a meteorite and the entire street was shaken by the powerful tremor. "Who are you?" Robin shouted and grabbed a birdrang from his utility belt. It looked like the newcomer did not hear him because he started walking towards the kneeling girl without sparing the other 4 a glance. "Don't come any closer." Coriander shouted hysterically and pointed her cuffed arms at him as energy bolts formed in her hands. Unlike the teens from before, Naruto had no issues with understanding her words thanks to his high-tech translating device. "I'm not gonna hurt you. Your parents hired me to rescue you." Naruto had expected at the mention of her parents for the girl to calm down, but instead, her face became twisted in anger and she screamed as she shot 2 very powerful bolts of energy from her hands. Though startled, he was not caught off guard. He had been cautious from the beginning because he knew very well just how dangerous a cornered beast could be. With a stomp of his foot, the street in front of his feet rose to make a wall in front of him, just in time to block the green energy bolts. The wall was blasted to smithereens, but the girl had poured the last of her strength in that attack. Then, she collapsed back on the ground powerlessly. She no longer posed any threat. "It's all right, little girl. Just go to sleep," Naruto said, and he formed a ram seal with his hands. Though Coriander was able to detect the unknown energy that invaded her body, she was too exhausted to resist against it. Her eyes closed against her will and she fell on her side, succumbing into a genjutsu-induced deep sleep. It was the same technique that Kabuto had cast over the stadium where Naruto's first Chunin exams had taken place when he was a young Genin. That is to say that it was an area of effect technique. The alien princess was not the only one to be forced into a deep sleep, but 2 of the 3 boys on the sidelines also fell on the ground asleep, with Beast Boy even snoring out loud. The only ones who could hold their composure and resist the genjutsu were the cloaked girl, Raven, and Cyborg, due to him being half robot. Over the past century, Naruto had never stopped training his taijutsu, ninjutsu and genjutsu, the 3 main arts of a shinobi. He had achieved an impressive feat in his ninjutsu due to his shadow clones. He had mastered all 5 nature transformations and even the yin and yang releases. His taijutsu had become flawless as well. Due to knowing that if he found a way back home he would have to fight against the rabbit goddess, Naruto had never slacked in his training. But genjutsu had never been his strong point. He had no talent in that area and hard work could only take one so far. Although he became proficient enough with it to fool the senses of regular people, those with decent magic resistance and any half-decent magic user could resist his genjutsu without problems. In that regard, the aforementioned girl, Raven, was more than half-decent when it came to magic. Black light appeared around Raven's hands and her eyes glowed beneath her hood. Cyborg's hand transformed into a cannon too as he shouted, "What did you do to them?" But Naruto did not have time to reply because a beam of red light blew up the place in front of his feet. It was a warning shot, coming from none other than Superman. And he was not alone. Alongside him were also Flash, Batman, and Hawkgirl. The ship that the Watchtower had detected was a Gordanian ship from which Coriander had broken out. Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman were investigating it at that moment. Now, he was surrounded from all sides by the 4 members of the Justice League and 2 of the local heroes of Jump City. "Do not move," Superman demanded. Naruto frowned behind his mask. "Why did you come back to Earth? And why did you kill Vandal Savage?" "Gee, Superman, why would a mercenary capture someone? Maybe because someone paid me to?" Superman frowned at his sarcasm. "Why are y'all even mad? I got rid of a mass murderer for you, for free. For all I know, you should be grateful. No lengthy trials, no chance for him to buy his way out with bribes and good lawyers, and no chance for him to escape prison again either. He's finished." "That's not how things work on Earth," Batman retorted. "No one has the right to take the law in their hands and kill." Naruto let out a drawn-out sigh. Whatever you say. I'm not in the mood for polemics. Look, I'll just get my bounty and be out of here." Then, under their eyes, he bent down and grabbed the sleeping princess from the ground and put her on his wide shoulder. "Put the girl down," Superman ordered as he started making steps towards him. "She's my bounty, and she's not an Earthling. This has nothing to do with you," Naruto said calmly, trying to reason with them. However, in the next moment, a red blur rushed at him from behind at the speed of sound. But with a light stomp of his foot, dangerous-looking spikes burst from the ground, almost impaling the attacker. The speedster was forced to jump high up in the air at the very last moment and abandon his attacking attempt. A clone appeared next to Naruto and grabbed the princess from his shoulder. Then, he turned towards the heroes surrounding him and warned, "I'm saying it one last time. This has nothing to do with you. Back off before things get ugly. I don't want to hurt you." Generally, Naruto tried to not get into altercations with good-natured people. He did not want to kill or maim people that did not deserve it. However, because he was not bound by their tight morals, once in a while, scenes like the current one still took place. "Oh, I don't know who'll get hurt in the end," Hawkgirl said, and her mace shone menacingly with electricity. "I suggest you let go of that girl and hand over Vandal Savage's remains too. After that, we won't stop you from leaving. You can leave the Earth and never come back," Batman said. Naruto no longer spoke. He prepared for fighting. Naturally, in normal conditions, he could have just teleported back to his ship and then be on his way. But with Coriander in his custody, things were different. He was more than capable of teleporting her alongside him, but the problem came after that. He did not know for how long the genjutsu that he had placed on her would last. His skill with genjutsu was unreliable. "If she wakes up in my ship and starts throwing around her energy bolts, my ship will be toasted." Initially, he had intended to explain the Tamarinian princess the situation and make her come willingly. But that idea flew out of the window with the Justice League's appearance. Of course, he also had another option: to beat the crap out of the girl until she became physically unable to even move. But Naruto was not the kind to raise his hands against innocence. especially since his mission was supposed to be about rescuing and protecting her, not breaking her arms and legs. But just then, a huge hologram appeared in the sky. It was the image of a muscular humanoid lizard with red eyes and metallic wings. It was a Gordanian. A sonorous voice reverberated through the entire city. People of Earth, we come to your planet to hunt down an escaped prisoner. A very dangerous prisoner. Do not interfere and we will leave your city with minimum damage. But if you attempt to assist her, your destruction will be absolute. Just as the Gordanian's words ended, Martian Manhunter's voice sounded in Batman's earpiece. Batman, the Gordanians on the ship do not want to negotiate. We cannot approach them easily either. They have their weapons aimed at us. True to the Martian's words, only a few moments later, a swarm of flying Gordanians appeared in the sky above Jump City. There were almost 100 of them. Gordanians? Why are they here? The words came out of Hawkgirl's mouth. Originally, she was more than ready to start brawling against the masked alien mercenary, but the moment the immense hologram of the Gordanian ship's commander appeared in the sky, she immediately changed her mind. She was not the only one either. Green Lantern was of the same mind as well. Though the Gordanian Intergalactic Empire was from outside the 3,600 space sectors regulated by the Green Lantern Corps, most of the Green Lanterns were aware of their evil deeds. Superman, we are focusing on the wrong guy. Green Lantern transmitted through his earpiece. He was currently flying very high up in the air, in front of the Gordanian ship together with Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman. I've heard about the Gordanians before. There. Hawkgirl cut him in the middle and continued his words. An intergalactic empire hell-bent on conquering and enslaving the galaxy. My people, the Thanagarians, have been at war against them for generations. They're the worst scum of the universe, pieces of trash that conquer planets and sell their inhabitants as slaves. Her voice was quivering with anger. The hate in her voice could not be faked. Her hatred for Gordanians had been ingrained in her since she was a frail child. They were her race's archenemy. It did not take a genius to realize that the alien girl was an escaped slave from one of the worlds enslaved by the Gordanians. They also reached the conclusion that the mercenary had no intention to harm her given that he had not attacked her and had only put her to sleep. Nevertheless, Naruto had no way of knowing what the Justice League was talking about amongst themselves. When Superman got within a 25 feet long distance from him, he thought that they were finally going to attack him. I've warned you, boy. I gave you a chance to back away. You only have yourself to blame. He spoke coldly. Wait. Superman began to say. He wanted to momentarily cease their hostilities in order to deal with the Gordanians' attack first, but his change of heart had come a little too late. The masked mercenary spread his feet in a wider stance and his legs bent slightly from the knees. Then, he slapped his hands together like in prayer and his fur-collared black cloak began to float and billow despite the absence of any wind, revealing the combat suit he was wearing underneath. A terrible aura started to ooze out of his body and a great feeling of danger assaulted Superman's sharp senses. But he was left with no room to react at all before he found himself losing his equilibrium and getting slammed against the ground. He was not the only one. On a radius of 600 feet around the praying Naruto, all living beings fell flat on their face against the ground. Only a few moments later, the nearly 100 Gordanians that had been flying in the air before were smashed against the ground too, cracking the streets with their bodies and splattering the surrounding cars and buildings with their blood. Fortunately, there were no civilians around as they had evacuated the entire district from the moment that Coriander had started to crazily blow up everything around her. But the ones present at the scene, the Gordanians, the Justice League and the 4 local heroes of Jump City were not as lucky. What is this? Flash said as he tried to push against the ground with his hands, but he fell back with a thud that almost knocked him out cold. He was finding it hard to even breathe. An invisible force was pulling at his internal organs and his blood was churning. Hawkgirl was similarly flat against the rooftop of a building. Her superior Thanagarian constitution made her having it easier than Flash, but she could still not move even an inch from where she stood. As for Batman, he was on the brink of death, barely holding on to his consciousness. It was gravity, with Naruto as the center. In a circle of 600 feet in diameter, Earth's gravity was multiplied several times over. It was the peak of mastery that Naruto had reached in the Earth release and the 6-path Sage mode. Every living being in that area was flat on their belly or back, struggling to cope against the force that threatened to end their lives. The Tamarnian princess, Robin and Beast Boy had been shaken out of their genjutsu-induced sleep, but they were similarly helpless, especially Robin, who was in the same situation as his former mentor. The only one able to raise up from the ground was Superman. His immense strength as a Kryptonian was clearly living up to its fame. If this goes on, everyone will die. We were in the wrong. Please stop, Superman said, his breathing erratic. The nearly 100 armed Gordanians that had flown down to Earth were all dead already, their smashed and bloodied corpses creating a macabre paysage. The cloaked girl, Raven, had encased herself in a sphere of pure darkness and was probably still fine as she sat on the ground. Beast Boy had turned himself into a tiny fleet to decrease the effective gravity on his body as much as possible, and Hawkgirl was in no immediate danger either, just immobilized. But Flash and Cyborg were starting to have serious difficulties while Batman and Robin were on the verge of dying. Though he was very annoyed at the Earthlings' nosiness, Naruto had never intended to kill them. That's why he had chosen to immobilize them instead of throwing any deadly techniques at them. Therefore, when he heard Superman's offering of peace, his hands that were stuck to each other in a prayer parted. Like a miracle, the terrible pulling force stopped. Although the Justice League and the heroes of Jump City were now free to move again, nobody dared to resume their previous hostility. But their collective relief was almost palpable. However, when they thought that it was finally over, a haze of red and gold light began to pour out of Naruto's body. From his legs to his waist and up to his chest before finally enveloping his head too, almost like a cocoon. Bathed in gold and crimson red light, he appeared like a miniature sun in the darkness of the night. 1. The entire process took only 1 second, but to the onlookers, it felt as though it was much longer. Then, the cocoon of light blasted outwards and a tremendous aura of power flooded the entire sky, and not only. At that moment, regardless of what place on the planet they were, the magic users highly attuned to the flow of magic sensed the disturbance. Inside a high-class restaurant in London, UK, a blonde man was having dinner with a very wealthy-looking man. He was in the process of promoting a brand new sleeping pill, self-created pills charmed to produce a magically induced sleep, when he suddenly jumped up to his feet, almost flipping the table and greatly startling his dining partner and potential customer. In a lone tower outside of Salem, in Massachusetts, a grizzled-haired man was having breakfast with his wife when he suddenly shivered and spilt the cup of coffee he had been drinking. In Napoli, Italy, a beautiful illusionist botched a magic trick that she was performing on the stage when she momentarily lost her focus, and instead of taking a rabbit out of her magic hat, she took out a snake, making the entire audience cry out in panic. On the island of Paradise, the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta, was startled awake from her meditation, and her devotion time to the gods were interrupted. Great Athena, protect her, she prayed, her heart filled with worry at the thought of her daughter. Enveloped in a mix of crimson red and golden chakra, his feet left the surface of the street as he started to slowly float. Behind his back, 10 pitch-black orbs came into existence, and with their apparition, a heavy pressure descended. It was not a physical force or something that could be seen or explained with science. It was the coercion that a superior existence could exert on the beings on a lower evolutionary scale. While the metahumans present at the scene were not too drastically affected, the regular humans on several tens of miles around were overwhelmed by a feeling of fear. Even before the rabbit goddess had thrown him into a dimensional portal, Naruto had been able to enter the six-path sage mode and combine it with his tailed beast mode. However, after almost a century, his mastery over it grew to the point where it could rival that of his ancestor, the sage of the six paths himself. With a red and yellow flash, his body disappeared. An instant later, he was 3 miles high up in the air, above Jump City, right in front of a galleon-class Gordanian ship. It was not the small type of ship that the Gordanian slavers used normally. It was much larger, almost half a mile long, with a crew numbering in the hundreds. It showed how much importance the Princess of Tamaran held for the Pshins, since the Gordanians were nothing more, nothing less than the Scion monarchy's attack dogs. In front of such an enormous spaceship, Naruto looked like an ant. But the moment he appeared floating in the sky, the warship's tens of guns and cannons were trained on him. Even the largest particle cannon at the bow of the spaceship, a cannon capable of even blowing up smaller moons, started to glow and flicker, a sign of it being charged to fire. A hail of laser beams was shot at him, but he seemed as calm and collected as ever. With a wave of his hand, one of the truth-seeking balls behind his back flew in front of him and took the form of an enormous black shield. The laser beams did not even make a sound of impact. At the contact with the black shield, they simply vanished. The Gordanians aboard the spaceship did not even have time to express their surprise, because right after the first wave of fire, Naruto flew closer to the black shield and slapped it lightly with his palm. But that light slap caused a shockwave so powerful that the sky was completely cleared of clouds in a radius of tens of miles around. Similarly, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, who had been watching the unfolding events with a blank look on their faces, were also blasted to thousands of feet away from the Gordanian ship's proximity. In fact, Naruto did not need to slap the shield that hard or to hit it at all. He could control it with a simple thought, with his mind. But he had done so in order to blow away the 3 members of the Justice League because he did not want for them to get killed too in the crossfire. Green Lantern managed to stabilize himself in the air first, and he also caught his 2 teammates with his power rings constructs of green light. The 3 of them turned their heads and looked back at the Gordanian ship just in time to see the large black shield smashing against it. They had been expecting a very powerful explosion, or at least another shockwave similar to the one from a few moments before. But there was none of that. The moment the black shield clashed against the Gordanian ship, it turned into a black sphere that encased the half-a-mile-long Galleon-class starship within. Then, without even making a sound, the enormous sphere that had encapsulated the Gordanian ship imploded. A warship capable of even taking over a planet was turned into nothingness. Just like that. After that, the now tiny orb flew back next to the other 9 truth-seeking orbs floating at his back. Jesus Christ. Great Hera. In front of a scene like that, Green Lantern and Wonder Woman could not help crying out the name of the gods they believed in. Martian Manhunter himself was mute, speechless. Down below, on the ground, the rest of the Justice League and the 4 local heroes of Jump City were no less shocked either. Although it was night, Naruto's 6 paths by Juu mode glowing like a miniature sun and the ship being almost half a mile long made them see what had happened perfectly, even despite the distance. Even for Batman and Superman, 2 veterans in fighting all kinds of aliens, it was the first time they had seen something as shocking as that. Until then, Batman had always thought that with enough preparation time, planning, and money, he could go against anyone. Naturally, that led to a great level of self-confidence and even a certain amount of pride being born in his heart. He, a mere human, with no superpowers, had managed to stand on equal grounds even against incredibly powerful beings such as Superman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter. However, when he saw the enormous Gordanian ship being erased from existence without even leaving a scrap of metal behind, he was shaken. What could I possibly do alone against a being like that? No. What could the Justice League do against someone like him? At the same time, Batman's mind also went to the business card that Naruto had given him half a year before. Back then, he had found it weird that someone that was wearing a fox-themed mask and had a 9-tailed fox companion would have such a strange alias, Caterpillar. But now he understood. At a first glance, Naruto had looked like an easygoing guy and a money grubber. A mercenary, fitting the stereotype. Ordinary and unassuming, like a caterpillar. But just like caterpillars transform into very beautiful butterflies once they come out of the cocoon and evolve, it was the same with Naruto when he revealed his true power. Everyone watched with trepidation how the deity-like alien flew back on the ground. Though Superman tried to not show his inner emotions, a focused observer would notice how rigid his expression looked. It was even worse because Superman could feel that the alien's powers were of a magical nature, the bane of his physiology alongside kryptonite and red radiation. Nonetheless, Naruto was not interested in antagonizing them or getting back at them for trying to make things hard for him. Though he loved to joke around and act like a filled with youthfulness man, his mind was still that of an old man. In his eyes, the Justice League were nothing but a group of children that tried to pick a fight against an adult and got their butts whooped. For him, it was enough if they learned their lesson and stayed put for a while. He had no further interest in quarreling with them, and he certainly no longer cared about preaching and force-feeding his philosophy of life to other people like when was a teenager. The red and yellow energy seeped back into his body and the 10 truth-seeking balls melted into his back, joining his chakra pool too. Without saying a word to the ones around him, he headed straight towards Coriander, who was still rooted in her place despite having woken up earlier from the genjutsu he had placed on her. "I've killed your captors. As I told you before, your parents hired me to rescue you," Naruto told her, and the translating device did its job to change his words into the language spoken on Tamaran. Coriander looked like she wanted to say something, but besides the trembling of her lower lip, she could not move her mouth. She was terrified. "Come with me. I hope you will behave and not throw any temper tantrums. For your own good." A shaky nod was all the confirmation he needed before placing a hand on her shoulder and teleporting themselves back to his ship. Now, he did not need to physically restrain her anymore. The girl was too scared to go against his words. I felt your power all the way from the other side of the planet. What the hell did you do? Kyubi asked when Naruto flew back to Europe with his ship to pick him up and leave the planet. In response to that, Naruto threw up a mouthful of coagulated purple-black blood in the toilet. Ugh, I hate this. Half of his face was violet and there were patches of purple and black over his hands, forearms and chest too. It was the effect of drawing the polluted nature energy of the earth when he had entered the six-path sage mode. He had drawn a rather large amount of natural energy to conjure the truth-seeking orbs and use one of them to disintegrate that enormous Gordanian ship. What was happening currently was the reason why he always avoided using his sage mode unless it was necessary on the planets inhabited by technologically advanced sentient beings. Those planets would be infected and polluted by the beings living on it. When he entered the six-path sage mode on such a planet, it was as though he was drinking poison. Now, he was facing the consequences. After he threw up a few more times, he took a quick shower and came back to the living quarters of his ship where Coriander was still waiting on the very sofa where he had left her an hour ago. She had not moved at all, but she did manage to regain some of her composure in that time frame. When she saw the masked Naruto entering the room, she asked, "What are you going to do with me?" Naruto sighed. "Look, I told you 2 times already, your parents hired me to rescue you from the Pshins. You're lying. Just tell me the truth," Coriander said, almost shouting. She looked very agitated. "You're saving her life and that's how she shows her gratitude? Ungrateful little twerp." Kyubi growled and one of his tails elongated, about to slap the snot out her, but Naruto put a hand on his head to stop him. "It's alright, Kurama," Naruto said. "It's not that bad, I'm fine." Clearly, Naruto was referring to the reason why Kyubi was angry, the fact that he got seriously ill. When he looked at the poisoned visage of Naruto and then at the girl who had not even said a thank you, he wanted to beat her up good and teach her some manners. Turning his attention back to Coriander, Naruto said, "I am a man of my word. I do not lie. Not in this kind of important matters." "How are you not?" "My parents have been dead for years," the girl shouted, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Naruto and Kyubi looked at each other in doubt. "Explain," Kyubi ordered. "It all started when the Gordanians attacked our planet. My sister had sold our planet's defense plans to the enemy. Because of her betrayal, Tamaran was conquered. In order to preserve the peace, for the sake of all the people of Tamaran, I was offered as a tribute to the Gordanians, as a slave." As she said that, Coriander's green eyes glowed with anger and hatred. "After that, my sister staged a coup and took control of Tamaran. Her men had executed the entire royal family, both my parents and my brother. Only I was left alive, sold to the Pshins who tortured and experimented on me for years." Energy bolts started taking form around her hands and she looked like she was about to lose control of them in her rage, but a large tail slapped her across the face so hard that she was thrown off the sofa. Her energy bolts disappeared back into her body before they could be fired. "If you as much as damage one chair in this ship after all he went through to rescue your sorry ass, I'll eat you alive, bounty be damned. This is your one and only warning." That threat would have come out as amusing had it been the previously tiny fox that made it, but that was not the case. Instead of a tiny fox cub there stood an enormous 9-tailed fox now, a fierce demon that cast a shadow over the entire living room with its size. Kyubi had no lost love for humans of any kind, that's why his behavior towards Wonder Woman had been strange in Naruto's eyes. Normally, this rough and violent attitude was what he showed to other people, not to mention how angry he was at the moment because Naruto had gotten himself hurt. "Kurama, get a hold of yourself. That's enough," Naruto said seriously. Though still pissed, Kyubi listened to his words and reverted to his regular form. Naruto took him in his arms and then placed him on his shoulder where Kyubi liked to sit usually. "Follow me to the control room," Naruto told the girl and she hurried to come after him. Kyubi smacking her with his tail had reminded her that she was not in a situation where she could throw tantrums and that the man in front of her was strong enough to kill her in a heartbeat, unlike the Gordanians from whom she had managed to escape before. After taking a seat in front of the computer, he called his information broker. "Come on, pick up you dirty rat," Naruto said in annoyance after the 4th unanswered call. "I have a bad feeling about this," Kyubi said. "I don't know, man, Rui Naka's never tried to screw with me. He's never lied to me about job-related things. But there are only 2 options, either the girl is lying about her parents being dead, or that rat bastard is lying. And I sense that this girl is speaking the truth." Naruto shook his head. "No, we can't take this as absolute. You know your negative emotion sensing can be fooled sometimes. If she truly believes that she is speaking the truth, you will not detect any lies even if what she says is not right. It could very be that she was made to believe that her parents were killed. That sounds more likely if you think what a piece of shit her sister is and that Rui Nok has never given us a reason to doubt him. But Kyubi was holding his position firmly. Trust me on this, Naruto. There's something fishy going on. Naruto looked at him in doubt but did not argue. Kyubi did not say things like that often, but when he did, his instincts often proved to be spot on. As he typed on the keyboard to set the coordinates for the next space warp, towards Tamaran in the Vega system, he resolved himself to approach the rest of the mission with extra caution. And guys, this is the end. How you enjoyed. See you next